the weapon! Get on the ground now! I'll burn you!
I still can't catch my breath from what happened last night. It's just past midnight, and I'm on my living room couch in Rio Grande City, Texas, staring at my locked doors and windows like they might suddenly open on their own. I keep repeating to myself that it was real, that I didn't dream it, but it all happened so fast it still feels unreal. I'm 25, a manager at a McDonald's here in town. It's scorching hot most of the year, and even at night the heat can feel brutal. My little house doesn't stay cool unless I run the AC hard, which I can't always afford. Some nights I crack a window just to let some air in. I know it's not the safest habit, but sometimes the heat is suffocating. Yesterday started out completely normal. I came home late from a shift, microwaved some leftovers, and zoned out on my phone for a while. Exhaustion hit hard, so around 1 a.m. I shut off the lights and crawled into bed. It felt breezy enough outside, and money was tight, so I decided not to run the AC. I left my bedroom window open a few inches instead. I must have fallen asleep almost right away. Normally, I'm a heavy sleeper, only really jolt awake if my alarm blares right in my ear or I desperately need the bathroom. Something woke me around 3:01 a.m. The red digits of my cheap alarm clock glowed in the corner of my vision. I blinked a few times, confused. I didn't feel thirsty. I didn't have to pee. I lay there trying to figure out what had pulled me out of sleep. Then I heard it. On my left side in the dark there was this sound. At first I thought it might be my stomach or just an old house settling. But a second later I realized exactly what it sounded like. Someone passing gas, right there in my bedroom. A cold spike of terror shot through my chest. My heart started pounding so hard it almost hurt. I turned my head slowly, letting my eyes adjust to the dim red glow from the clock. It wasn't much light, but it was just enough to make out a shape on the other pillow. Ahead, a person was lying beside me. He looked like an older man, 70s maybe, on his back with his mouth slightly open, breathing softly. I could see the faint outline of his nose, his forehead, thinning hair. For a moment my mind just refused to process what I was seeing. Who was this man? Why was he in my bed? How did he get in? Then it hit me, my window. The window I'd left cracked open because I didn't want to pay for AC. I almost screamed, but instinct made me slap my hand over my own mouth. I was terrified that if he woke up, he would lunge at me or worse. Horrible possibilities rushed in all at once, being trapped, grabbed, hurt, killed. My whole body trembled with adrenaline as I tried not to move. Carefully, trying to keep my breathing silent, I reached for my phone on the nightstand. My fingers fumbled over the surface until I finally closed my hand around it. I lifted the blanket inch by inch and eased one foot onto the floor, praying the mattress wouldn't squeak. Every tiny movement sounded deafening in the stillness, but the old man didn't stir. He just lay there, breathing. With my phone clutched tight to my chest, I slowly stood and backed toward the door. The knob turned with a faint squeak that made me freeze, listening for any sign he'd woken up. Nothing. I slipped into the hallway, shut the door as gently as I could, and hurried across the house to the bathroom. Once inside, I turned the lock and sagged against the door, shaking. Dialing 911 felt unreal, like I was acting out a scene in someone else's story. My voice trembled as I told the operator there was a stranger in my bed, an older man who must have crawled in through my open window. They asked if there were signs of forced entry. I told them no, that this was my fault, that I'd left the window unlatched. The operator stayed on the phone, talking me through my breathing while my imagination ran wild. I pictured him waking up, wandering my dark house, trying each door until he found the bathroom. After what felt like forever, probably about 10 minutes, there was a sharp knock at my front door. Police. Open up. I hurried to let them in, still practically vibrating with fear. 2 officers stepped inside. I led them down the hallway, staying right behind one of them like he was the only solid thing in the world. He flipped on my bedroom light. I braced myself to see the man lying there, or standing in the corner, or nothing. The bed was empty. The blankets a little rumpled, the pillow indented, but no sign of the old man at all. We searched the entire room, under the bed, in the closet, behind the door. Then they went room to room through the rest of the house. All clear. The only thing out of place was my still open window. The officers said he must have slipped out the same way he came in right after I left the room. They told me to keep my windows locked from now on, and to call immediately if I ever saw him again. My voice barely worked when I tried to thank them. When they left, the house felt too quiet. I couldn't make myself go back into that bedroom. I grabbed a blanket from the hall closet and set up on the couch in the living room instead, double and triple checking every door and window before I sat down. Sleep never came. Now it's the following night and I'm still on the same couch in the same clothes, too afraid to relax enough even to shower. I've checked every lock, every latch, every closet at least 3 times. I keep thinking about shoving a dresser in front of the bedroom window, but even that thought doesn't calm me. Why my house? Why my bed? The idea of some stranger silently climbing in while I slept inches away from him makes my skin crawl. I keep wondering if he stood there watching me first before lying down, if he hovered over me in the dark. Rio Grande City never felt especially dangerous to me. Sure, I've wished I could leave for someplace cooler with better pay, but I never thought I'd be scared in my own home. Now every rustle of wind outside, every tap of a branch on the glass, sends me into a minor panic. I don't know if he'll come back. Part of me thinks he was just some drifter looking for somewhere to sleep. But the fact that he chose my bed, that he lay down right beside me, haunts me. Maybe he had been watching the house. Maybe he's still out there, waiting for another open window. All I can do is keep everything locked, try to breathe, and hope that someday I'll lie down to sleep without seeing his silhouette on the pillow next to mine. My name is Kyle, and I live in a small apartment just outside Louisville, Kentucky. Back in October 2022, I was 24, working part-time and trying to finish my senior year of college. Money was tight, so I bought almost everything secondhand, from furniture to electronics. I wanted a new TV but couldn't afford retail. A friend suggested Craigslist. I hadn't really used it before, but after browsing a bit, I found what looked like a great deal. A nearly new Samsung TV for a price that seemed too good to pass up. The seller went by James. Over text, he seemed normal, polite, responsive. He sent several photos of the TV plugged in, streaming Netflix with bright images on the screen. It all looked legit. We agreed to meet on a Wednesday evening. He suggested the parking lot of an old strip mall on the edge of town. The shops had been closed for months, but there was a gas station across the street and cars constantly passing on the main road nearby. It seemed public enough. When I pulled in just after 9:30 p.m., the emptiness unsettled me. I parked under one of the few working street lights and checked my phone. James had texted that he was running a little late but on his way. As I waited, the quiet pressed in. The lot was huge and mostly dark, the only sounds the faint hum of traffic and the occasional breeze. I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid. A few minutes later, a dark SUV rolled slowly into the lot and stopped near the far end by a closed grocery store. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. No one got out at first. Just as I was about to text him again, the driver's door opened and a tall guy stepped out. He lifted a hand and waved, but didn't come toward me. Instead, he motioned for me to walk over to him. I hesitated. Everything in me wanted to stay by my car under the light. But then I thought about the cheap price, about how I'd already come this far. I swallowed the unease and walked toward his SUV. "James?" I asked. He nodded, glancing around the empty lot. When he saw I was alone, his body language shifted, relaxed in a way that made me more nervous, not less. The back door of the SUV was open. Inside was a large cardboard box big enough for a TV. James stood beside it, hands in his pockets, giving me a practiced smile. "Go ahead, check it out," he said, stepping aside. I leaned in. There was a flat screen inside, but it was dusty, as if it had been sitting in a garage for months. It didn't look like the crisp, clean TV from the photos he'd sent. Before I could really process that, I felt something cold and hard press into the small of my back. In that instant, time slowed. My thoughts exploded in 1,000 directions, but one reality cut through the noise. This wasn't a TV sale. "Wallet, phone, keys," James said quietly. His voice was calm, almost bored, like he'd done this before. My hands started shaking uncontrollably. I did what he said, or thought I did, fumbling as I pulled out my wallet. I remember placing it in his open hand. In all the confusion, I didn't realize that I hadn't actually given him my phone. It was still clenched in my other fist. He nudged me forward hard. I stumbled and went down on my hands and knees, scraping the skin raw on the rough pavement. Behind me, I heard the SUV door slam and tires screech as he sped out of the lot. I stayed on the ground for a second, gasping, before forcing myself to my feet. My whole body was shaking, but when I looked down, my phone was still in my hand. He'd only gotten my wallet, with all my cash and cards. I called the police, my voice unsteady as I tried to sound coherent. They came, took my statement, asked for any details I could remember. Height, build, vehicle make, possible plates. I had almost nothing useful. It had been too dark, too fast. They said they'd look into it, but I could see it in their faces. They didn't expect to find him. Days later, I was cleaning my apartment, trying to put the incident behind me. I opened our old text conversation so I could finally delete it and move on. That was when I saw something I'd missed. In one of the photos James had originally sent, the TV plugged in, Netflix on the screen, there was a faint reflection, a silhouette. I zoomed in. My heart started pounding. Behind James, barely visible in the TV's glossy surface, was another figure standing in the shadows. They were holding something long and thin in one hand. Maybe a pipe, maybe a bat, something meant for intimidation or worse. So it hadn't just been James that night. There had been someone else there too, probably inside the SUV, probably waiting to see how things played out. I realized then how lucky I'd been. Whatever pressed against my back might not have even been a gun. Maybe they'd expected things to go differently. Maybe they'd been prepared for something far worse than a quick robbery. That thought has stayed with me longer than the anger, longer than the financial headache. Knowing how close I may have come to something I can't even bring myself to fully imagine. Before the next story starts, if this is your first time here, remember to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming scary stories. Sharing these with friends and family really helps the channel grow. My name is Matt Reynolds, and I'm a junior at the University of Colorado Boulder. Most days are painfully routine. Drag myself out of bed for an 8 a.m. lecture, skip breakfast, sprint across campus, then hide in the library till it's dark out. When I pass people in the hall, it's just quick nods and hey s, nothing real. By the time my 22nd birthday rolled around, December 2nd, 2023, that emptiness hit harder than ever. I realized I had no one to celebrate with. Not really. The loneliness felt like a weight on my chest. I decided I needed a change of scenery, at least for a weekend. My dad always told me to take advantage of Colorado's outdoors, to get out into the mountains. So I planned a solo camping trip to Roosevelt National Forest. I loaded my beat-up Honda Civic with a tent, some basic food, and my dog, Clyde, a scruffy mutt who'd been by my side since high school. If anyone qualified as my best friend, it was him. We got to the campground late in the afternoon. The sky was gray and heavy, like it was thinking about snow. Tall pines swayed overhead, and the air had that sharp, cold smell that comes right before winter really settles in. I pitched my little tent near an old fire ring. Clyde ran around in frantic circles, nose to the ground, tail whipping like he'd just won the lottery. Watching how happy he was made me feel a little less guilty for dragging him out into the cold. By the time I got a small fire going, dusk had settled around us. The forest was quiet, No other campers in sight, just the crackle of flames and the occasional rustle of wind through branches. Sitting there, I found myself wishing my dad was with me. He'd always talked about teaching me how to handle wildlife. He even offered to lend me his old hunting rifle for protection. I'd waved it off. Now I wished I had it more than anything. As I warmed my hands by the fire, Clyde started to growl. The sound was low and serious, not his usual playful grumble. He was staring past the edge of the firelight toward a line of trees. His ears were pinned back, body rigid, ready to spring. I squinted into the darkness, and at first I saw nothing. Then, two bright points of light appeared. They looked like distant reflectors hanging in the dark at about chest height. They didn't move, just hovered there. My stomach twisted. Then the lights blinked. Eyes. For a second I thought about shouting, waving my arms, doing something to scare whatever it was away. Before I could decide, the eyes started to move, gliding closer, step by step. A large, lean shape emerged into the outer edge of the fire's glow. A mountain lion. I'd heard about them around here, read warnings online to keep pets close, but seeing one in the flesh was different. Terrifying. The cat's muscles rippled under tawny fur, its tail twitched. It watched me with cold patience, head low, weighing the situation. Was I prey? Was Clyde? Then it lunged. The distance between us vanished in a blur. Clyde exploded forward with a deep, furious bark that didn't sound like anything I'd heard from him before. He threw himself straight into the lion's path. The next moments were chaos, roaring, snarling, a tangle of fur and claws and teeth. The firelight threw crazed shadows on the trees as they struggled. Then Clyde's barks cracked into a sharp, agonized yelp. In that flickering light, I saw the mountain lion clamp its jaws around my dog and drag him backward, away from the fire, into the dark. I didn't move. I couldn't. I stood there like my feet had been nailed to the ground, my brain screaming at my body to do something, anything. But nothing responded. The forest went silent again, the only sound my own ragged breathing. I called his name. Clyde, Clyde. The only reply was wind sliding through the branches. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I just sat by the fire, adding wood every time it started to die, tears streaming down my face. Every tiny sound snapped my nerves. I kept expecting the lion to circle back, to find me next. I had no weapon, nothing that could stop it. When morning finally came, the sky was pale and washed out. I felt hollow. My backpack lay where I dropped it, half unzipped. Some of my stuff had spilled out onto the ground, probably in the confusion. I packed my tent with shaking hands, my eyes constantly scanning the tree line, hoping, against all logic, to see Clyde limping back into camp. He never did. I drove away from Roosevelt National Forest wishing I'd never gone alone, wishing I'd listened to my dad, wishing I'd never let Clyde off his leash. Since then, sleep comes in fits and starts. Whenever I close my eyes, I see those glowing eyes in the dark and hear Clyde's last bark echoing through the trees. I keep telling myself it was a freak accident, that he saved my life. But sometimes, lying awake at night, I swear I can still feel something out there in the dark. Those same eyes, watching, waiting for the next person stupid enough to camp without a gun and a plan. Sometimes I think I hear Clyde's paws on the floor or the soft thud of his tail against my bedroom wall. Every time I get up to check, there's nothing there. Nothing but the memory of those eyes and the sound of my best friend being dragged into the cold, endless silence of the forest. I first started writing this on September 23rd, but I never got around to sharing it until now. I live in an apartment complex near a golf course club on the edge of town. Not many people live out here, so nights get very quiet. The complex is built partly into a small hill at the end of a road. My unit is on the ground floor, back corner of the building. That means the bottoms of my living room and bedroom windows are literally just a few inches above the ground outside. Behind my building, there's a narrow walking trail that cuts through a small patch of woods. My living room windows look out over maybe 15-20 feet of grass before a tree line. On the other side of those trees are a few houses on the next street over. Not much of a view, just enough to feel a little exposed. This has been going on for a couple of months now, and I still don't know if it's paranoia or something else. Last summer, a family moved into one of the houses on the next street, a few doors down from where my apartment lines up. I've only ever seen one person, a middle-aged man, and once or twice his dog. One day I took my Shih Tzu, Harley, outside. The man was in his backyard, standing there with his arms crossed, slowly swaying side to side like an idle video game character from the early 2000s. The dumpster shed for the complex is visible from his yard. When we accidentally made eye contact, I gave this awkward little wave and then focused on my phone while Harley did her business. Out of the corner of my eye, I could tell he didn't look away. He just stood there, watching. We have the same breed of dog, so I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was thinking about bringing his out to meet Harley, but he didn't have his dog with him. After Harley finished, I headed back inside faster than usual. My younger brother lives in the same complex, but upstairs on the second floor. He told me that every now and then he'd see that man let his dog out, then cross the tree line into the apartment yard. He'd slowly circle near the back of the building, closer than necessary, before going home again. In September, when I first started drafting this, my then boyfriend and I broke up. The night I told him to leave, I went to a friend's place for a bit. I didn't want to leave Harley alone too long, so after about an hour I came back. I crashed on the couch with a YouTube video playing, a black screen with rain sounds. I must have knocked out quickly. Around 2 a.m., I woke to Harley losing her mind. She was on the other couch, the one directly under the main living room window, barking and growling at the curtains like she wanted to tear through them. I got up, half asleep, to grab her and calm her down. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The curtains are thin. Normally, I can faintly see the glow from the streetlights on the next road through the fabric. But now, right above where Harley stood, that glow was gone. Something was blocking the light, a dark mass, higher than she could reach. My hands went cold. I grabbed the remote and turned off the TV, walking toward the window. The TV has that old-school effect, where the picture sucks into a small point of light before going black. In that brief flash, the living room lit up for less than a second. It was enough. In that instant, I saw the silhouette of someone crouched just outside the window, dressed in dark clothes, face close to the glass, looking in. They must have seen me too, because the second the room went dark, I heard quick footsteps thudding away across the grass. I snatched Harley up and ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, then locked myself in my bedroom. Hands shaking, I texted my ex. "Were you just outside my window?" I asked. He replied almost immediately, "No. What are you talking about?" I didn't believe him at first. He's never awake that late. I told him I was about to call the police and begged him to just tell me the truth if it was a prank. He insisted it wasn't him and said I should call the cops regardless. He even sent his live location. He was at a friend's house, over an hour away. So I dialed 911 and told them I'd just seen someone crouched outside my window. Officers came, looked around, and, unsurprisingly, found nothing. They said they'd keep a patrol car nearby for a while and told me to call again if anything else happened. For the next couple of weeks, around the same time, 2 to 3 a.m., Harley would suddenly go nuts at the window. By the time I got over there and pulled back the curtain, no one was there. Fast forward to May 2024. I was going through my storage closet and found some of my ex's things. We arranged for him to stop by and pick them up. I was out with friends, so he let himself in, grabbed his stuff, and took Harley out for a quick walk before leaving. Later, he texted me to come home. He said we needed to talk about something important. When I walked in, he had this puzzled, unsettled look on his face. "What couldn't you just text me?" I asked. He told me that while he was loading his things into his truck, he'd taken Harley out and was approached by an older lady who lives on the second floor. The dumpster is at the very end of the parking lot. If you turn right there, you're facing the side of my building. right where my living room window is. There are a few big trees in that spot that keep it shadowy, even in summer. The woman told him that while she was taking her trash out one night, she heard a twig snap. She turned toward the sound and saw a man standing right outside my window, not just walking by. He was pressed up against the glass, one hand cupped around his face to block out reflections so he could see inside, his phone in the other hand, pointed straight into my apartment. Recording. She shouted, asking him what he was doing. He acted like he didn't hear her, then walked slowly away in the opposite direction. Hearing that made my skin crawl. It meant that whoever I'd seen in that flash of TV light hadn't just been passing through. They'd been coming back, watching, filming. I went out and bought a stand-up Ring camera and set it in my living room window facing out. I should have done it months earlier. It's the idea that unsettles me the most, not just that someone was outside, but that they felt entitled to my privacy, to my life through the glass, that they might have those clips saved somewhere, of me, inside my own home, unaware. Every Halloween, my neighborhood throws a huge celebration. It's become a tradition that gets bigger every year. Food trucks lining the streets, live music echoing down the block, games and decorations in almost every yard. That particular year, the main party was hosted by Jason, a neighbor who lived 3 houses down. Jason was in his early 40s, a large guy with a booming voice and a reputation for having a temper. Most of us had seen him blow up at past gatherings over small disagreements. His parties were fun, but there was always this undercurrent of tension when he was around. My friend Ben and I headed over just after sunset. The air was crisp, cool, and smelled like fallen leaves. Kids in costumes darted between houses, laughing and squealing. Adults clustered in groups in Jason's front yard, chatting and drinking. Jason had gone all out. Orange lights strung along fences and trees, a sound system blasting music, tables of food set up everywhere. In the backyard near the wooden deck, he'd rented a big bounce house for the kids. We mingled for a while, talked with neighbors, watched kids run in and out of the bounce house. After an hour or so, Ben and I moved to the front yard, where it was a little quieter and less crowded. That's when I noticed Fred. Fred lived a few houses away. He was about 30 and had been labeled a troublemaker since we were all kids. He loved Halloween, always the loudest costume, the wildest behavior. That night he was dressed as a clown. His face paint was smeared from sweat and partying. He staggered a little when he walked, and his words slurred, definitely drunk or high on something. He lumbered over to us, clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder, and invited us to join him in the bounce house, babbling about how fun it was. We declined, politely but firmly. He gave this weird laugh and wandered back toward the backyard. Moments later, the shouting started. At first, I assumed it was just another argument, Jason yelling at someone yelling back. Then 2 teenage girls sprinted around the side of the house, faces pale, eyes wide, heading straight past us. They looked terrified. Ben and I exchanged a look and hurried toward the backyard to see what was going on. The scene we walked into still feels like a bad dream. Neighbors were scattered everywhere, ducking behind trees, fences, and deck posts. The music had cut off. Conversations had died. In the middle of the yard stood Fred. His painted face was twisted into something almost monstrous, rage stretching every line. His chest heaved as he breathed, and in his hands, unmistakable even in the dim yard lights, was a real AK-47. Not a prop, not a toy, a rifle. Later, we pieced together what had happened. Fred had climbed into the bounce house, getting rowdy and scaring the kids. Jason had confronted him, telling him to get out. Fred refused, shouting, cursing. Jason and his friend, an off-duty cop who was at the party, ended up physically pulling Fred out of the bounce house and away from the kids. Humiliated and furious, Fred had stormed off home. None of us expected him to come back like this. Now he stood there, waving the weapon around, yelling threats into the air. His finger hovered dangerously close to the trigger as the barrel swung past houses, fences, people. All the fun of the night evaporated in an instant. It felt like the air itself had frozen. I ducked behind a tree with Ben, my heart slamming against my ribs. Around me, I could hear people whispering into their phones, calling 911 with shaking voices. Minutes crept by. Fred kept shouting, pacing in short, jerky bursts, occasionally raising the gun as if he might fire it into the crowd at any second. Then, finally, flashing blue and red lights broke through the darkness at the end of the street. Police poured into Jason's yard, weapons drawn, voices sharp and commanding as they told Fred to drop the gun. For a long, awful moment, he just stood there, breathing hard, like he was deciding what to do. Then slowly he set the rifle down. Officers rushed him, pinning his arms and taking him into custody. No one was hurt. Somehow, we had avoided what could have been a massacre. The party was over, obviously. People drifted away in stunned silence, some crying, some just staring. Parents clutched their kids a little tighter as they walked home. Years have passed since that night, but I still replay it in my head. The way Fred looked in that clown makeup, distorted by anger, a rifle in his hands where a beer should have been. Every Halloween, when decorations go up and plans for neighborhood parties start, I can't help but think of how fast things can shift. 1 minute, you're sharing candy and laughing under orange lights. The next, you're hiding behind a tree, wondering if you're about to hear gunfire. The parties still happen. People still eat, drink, and celebrate. But for me, there's always this quiet, lingering edge of caution. A reminder of how thin the line is between a good memory and a nightmare. It was a chilly October afternoon when I first really thought about the old wing of our school. I walked home from class with my backpack slung over one shoulder, leaves crunching under my sneakers. The air smelled like wood smoke and damp dirt. I just started high school and everything felt big and new and a little overwhelming. My name is Ethan. I'm a pretty normal student, more worried about grades, girls, and fitting in than anything else. But lately, something darker had been on my mind. Whispers, rumors about the closed-off building attached to our school, the old wing. It had been shut down for years. No one talked about it openly, but I'd hear bits and pieces in the hallways, see kids lean in close and lower their voices. By the time I got home that day, my curiosity was burning. I tossed my backpack on the floor, grabbed a bag of chips, and flopped onto the couch. My little brother Tommy was glued to his cartoons, laughing. Mom was in the kitchen humming while she cooked. I thought about telling her what I'd heard about the old wing, but I knew how that would go. She'd probably just tell me to stay away and focus on homework. So I waited until the next day at lunch. My friends Jude and Matilda are the type who never turn down a stupid idea if it sounds exciting. We had our usual table in the cafeteria. Halfway through my sandwich, I leaned in and lowered my voice. "You guys ever hear anything about the old wing?" I asked. Matilda raised her eyebrows. "Yeah, people say it's haunted," Jude snorted. "You actually believe that stuff? What if there's something there?" I said. "We could check it out. After school." They argued at first, but I could see the spark in their eyes. Eventually, they agreed. By the final bell, my heart was pounding. We grabbed flashlights from our bags and met at the back corridor that led toward the old section. The hallway was dim and dusty, the paint peeling off the walls. A cold draft slid along the floor, wrapping around our ankles. "This place is super creepy," Matilda whispered. "Just stick together," I told her. I wished I sounded braver than I felt. At the end of the hallway, we reached a heavy door with a rusty sign hanging crooked above it. "Authorized personnel only." My hand trembled a little as I pushed it open. The hinges groaned and the smell hit us at once, musty, moldy, thick with rot and old wood. Inside, the air felt still, almost too still. Dust motes floated in our flashlight beams. Cracked walls, broken tiles, and burned marks on the floor made the place look like a ghost of a school. Something shiny in the corner caught my eye, half buried under a pile of gray ash. "Hey, over here," I called softly. Jude and Matilda hurried over. Together, we brushed away the ash and pulled out an old yearbook. The cover was warped, the pages yellowed and brittle. We flipped through it carefully. The photos showed smiling students, clubs, sports teams, kids who looked just like us, frozen in time. Then we reached a page that made my skin crawl. It was a memorial page. A short article described a fire that had started in the old wing years earlier. Several students had died. Their faces were printed along the side, grinning yearbook portraits above a line of text about their lives cut short. "What happened here?" Matilda asked, voice barely above a whisper. Before I could answer, a low creak sounded behind us. We turned at the same time. The door we'd come through was slowly swinging shut on its own. Beyond it, we could hear the wind outside, whistling faintly. "Did either of you close that?" Jude asked. We all shook our heads. The air suddenly felt heavier, like the room was holding its breath. Matilda's flashlight flickered, sputtered, then steadied again. "We should leave," she said. "Now." We turned toward the door, ready to bolt, when a sharp gust of wind rushed through the room. All three flashlights blinked and died at once. Darkness swallowed us. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. We fumbled with our flashlights, smacking them, twisting the ends, trying to get them back on. "This isn't funny," Jude shouted into the dark. His voice shook in a way I'd never heard before. Then we all heard it, a whisper. At first it was so faint I thought it was my imagination, but it grew clearer, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Please help us." We grabbed each other's arms instinctively. I could feel Matilda trembling beside me. The whisper repeated, surrounding us. "Please help us." That was all it took. We bolted. We ran blind in the darkness, crashing into walls and bumping into desks and debris. Somehow, by sheer luck or something else, we made it back to the door. It swung open with a loud bang just as we reached it, like it had been waiting for us. We stumbled out into the main hallway and kept going until we were outside, where the cold evening air hit us like a slap. We collapsed on the grass, panting. "What just happened in there?" Matilda asked, eyes wide. "I don't know," I said, "but we shouldn't have gone in." We all agreed, no more trips to the old wing. Whatever was in there, whatever history it held, deserved to be left alone. Still, I can't stop thinking about it, about those faces in the yearbook, about those whispers. Sometimes I wonder if they were the voices of the students who died in that fire, still trapped somehow, calling out to anyone who might hear, or if it was something else entirely. As October came to an end and the air outside turned sharper, I'd catch myself staring at the sealed door from across the courtyard, feeling that same chill creep up my neck. The three of us never talked about it in detail again, but it changed something between us. It bound us together with a secret that doesn't fade. Every time I walk past that part of the building, I hear it again in my mind. "Please help us." I remember thinking it was going to be the perfect setup. My friend Robert, someone I'd known for about a year, needed a roommate in Lincoln Hall at the University of Pennsylvania. I needed a dorm spot. We were both majoring in information technology. He'd even helped me install Arch Linux on my laptop once. It felt like a win-win. At first, it kind of was. In those early weeks, we'd go to our coding classes, grab food in the cafeteria, and talk about software, games, or whatever new tech we were excited about. It wasn't exactly a sitcom friendship, but it was fine. Then I started noticing things. Robert had this rule: lights out at exactly 11 p.m., not 11:01, not 11 o'clock and 10 seconds, 11 sharp. If I so much as rustled paper or clicked my mouse after that time, he'd snap. I'd never seen anyone go from calm to furious so fast. It wasn't normal irritation. It was full-on rage. I brushed it off at first. Everyone has quirks, right? Then I realized a $50 bill was missing from my wallet. Initially, I blamed myself. I have a winter coat with way too many pockets. I told myself it had probably fallen out somewhere. But after that, Robert started borrowing things. First my bus pass, then my headphones. Then he began hinting that I should buy expensive gear for us to use, stuff he'd pay me back for later. He asked to borrow my bus pass and promised to return it in 3 days. On the 4th day, I needed it to get to a job interview at McDonald's. He still hadn't given it back. I asked once, twice, 10 times. By the 20th, I felt like I was begging for something I owned. When he finally handed it over, I'd already missed the bus and ended up walking through snow up to my knees. Between the strict lights out rule and the financial weirdness, the room stopped feeling like mine. Still, I tried to be understanding. I knew he'd recently started a new medication and mood swings were a side effect. I didn't want to judge too fast. Then came the game consoles. We both had handhelds. I just bought a brand new Nintendo 3DS from cartridges galore for around $109. He had a 2DS and suggested we do a swap. I wasn't wild about the idea, but he talked me into it with the promise of a quick system transfer. I agreed and let him handle both devices briefly. Days went by. Every time I asked for my 3DS or even for the 2DS we traded for, he dodged the question or changed the subject. Eventually, it became obvious he wasn't planning to give me either one back. That was it for me. I told him if he didn't return at least the 2DS, I was calling the police. He laughed in my face, acting like I was overreacting. I called anyway. They didn't come storming in or anything, but they did direct me to the dorm counselors who helped mediate. In the end, I got the 2DS back. The officer who spoke with me said it was technically a civil matter, which meant there wasn't much more they could do. Things only went downhill from there. One night, after a late shift at McDonald's, I came back to the room exhausted. I had barely closed the door behind me when Robert stormed in. He slammed the door so hard it rattled my desk and made my heart jump into my throat. He didn't touch me, but the look in his eyes was enough. Pure fury, directed at everything and nothing, filling the room like a storm. I have severe PTSD. In moments like that, my body just shuts down. My heart pounded so hard I could barely hear. My hands went numb. I froze in place, waiting to see what he'd do. After a few tense seconds, he walked back out, probably to the bathroom. The second he left, I dropped to the floor and crawled under my bed. I stayed there for hours. Every sound outside the door made me flinch. I was terrified he'd burst back in, start screaming, or worse. By morning, when I heard him leave for class, my muscles were cramped and my mind was made up. I needed out. I called my psychiatrist and explained everything. Within a day, the school got a note recommending I be moved to a private dorm for my own mental health. When they handed me the new keys, I felt like I could finally breathe again. I packed as fast as I could, not caring if my clothes were folded or my cables tangled. I just wanted to be out of that room, away from Robert and the constant anxiety. When my mom called later, I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. I told her I'd asked for a room change because of loud music and racial slurs from a neighboring room, not because my roommate, someone I had trusted, had become someone I was afraid of. She heard the tension in my voice, I'm sure, but she didn't push. Sometimes I still think about that missing $50. Part of me wonders if Robert took it. Part of me wonders if one of his friends did when they dropped by. It shouldn't matter so much, but it does. Maybe because facing the truth means accepting that a person I thought I knew was willing to use me, lie to me, and intimidate me under the same roof. I'm sharing this because not every frightening story is supernatural. Sometimes the scariest things are slow and subtle. The feeling of being trapped in a room with someone whose moods you can't predict, whose anger you can't control. No matter how well you think you know someone, you don't really see all their sides until you're sharing four walls and a door that doesn't always feel like it's on your side.